Hello, my favorite listener, and welcome back into the Dark of the Woods. This is the final episode, episode 5 of The Bargain of the Fields. This is a Rust Belt Studio production, and we always ask if you can support us via Acast and the supporter feature, or join our Patreon. Any little bit helps even the listens, and we appreciate you being here. Now go ahead and settle in. The show is about to start. Eero Caillion had never married. In a town like Iron Bay, that fact did not go unnoticed. The other farmers his age had long since filled pews with wives and children, whole rows of them shifting in their Sunday best. Men slapped each other's backs outside the feed store, passing around pictures of grandkids, while Eero walked past with only a nod. It wasn't that anyone disliked him. He was steady, reliable, the sort who always brought extra wood for the church stove, who lent his truck without fuss, who made sure neighbors found eggs or potatoes left on their porch when times ran thin. But steady didn't keep tongues from wagging either. Some said he'd been burned once, a woman in Marquette who'd left him. Others whispered maybe he didn't like women at all, at least not in the way that was expected. A few, half-joking, suggested he was already married to the land, to those endless rows of pumpkins he carted off each fall. Eero never corrected them, he just let them talk. Small towns needed their stories, and he had no use for explaining. The truth was simpler, heavier. He knew the price of prosperity, and he would not pay it with love. He'd seen the toll, knew it down to the year, the cycle that turned like clockwork. 7 seasons fat with bounty, then the shadow returned to collect. Always a woman, sometimes close kin, sometimes not, but the pattern held, carved into his family line as surely as furrows in a field. So Eero built his life narrow. The farm and the work, the town just enough to keep him known but not bound, no wife, no children. The Caillion name might grow lonely, but he would not hand it over. When his sister's girl came to stay, bright-eyed, quick with her hands, too much laughter in her, he heard the shift in the town talk all over again. A middle-aged bachelor and his niece. Poor girl, some said, saddled with him. Others wondered if maybe he was grooming her to inherit the farm, odd as that seemed in this day and age. The ugliest gossip hinted at worse, though never within earshot. Eero just let it all slide. Gossip had no teeth unless you gave it a place to bite. He carried on the same as always, selling pumpkins by the truckload, keeping his rows straight and his ledger clean. He watched Anya move through the town with a smile, making friends, setting her roots deeper each year. She painted her small gourds, bright little faces that made the church ladies laugh. She joined her friends at the socials, carried herself with an ease he had never had. He was proud of her, though he would not say it out loud. And he was very afraid for her, though he kept that locked deep inside as well. The price was always waiting. In the quiet of his house, when the windows rattled with autumn wind, he would sometimes lay a hand on the old album beneath his bed. Its clippings told the truth no one in town would speak. The bargain never forgot. And Eero Caillion, alone as he had chosen to be, knew the day was coming when even his silence would not keep it at bay. The Lutheran church stood whitewashed against the October sky, steeple sharp as a stake. Its bell tolled noon as Eero pulled into the gravel lot, dust rising behind his truck. He liked to come early before the pews filled, when the nave was still and cool, the light bent through the stained glass in muted colors. There were no padded kneelers here, just plain wood that creaked under weight. Eero sank down anyway, knees aching, head bowed. He folded his hands and mouthed the prayer he'd said so many times it had lost shape. He did not ask for more yield. He did not ask for good weather. He asked only for mercy, though he knew by now such words carried no weight. When the doors opened and voices came, he rose and set his shoulders square. The friendly mask slid on easy. He shook hands, nodded to neighbors, accepted the usual remarks about his pumpkins, about how Anya must be a blessing in his house. He smiled where he should, and no one saw the tightness in his jaw. The service passed, hymns rising and falling, then the pews emptied into the basement hall for the social. Long tables groaned with pies and bars, kettles of coffee, pitchers of cider. Children darted between skirts, sugar already on their tongues. Anya found him near the end of the table, her face flushed from chatter. She carried something wrapped in a towel, careful as it might spill. "Uncle," she said, eyes bright, "look what I made." She set it down and pulled the towel aside. A pumpkin sat there, hollowed and carved, its skin cut clean. A wolf howled at a crescent moon, teeth bared, neck arched. Behind it rose cornstalks etched in careful lines, each leaf distinct. The work was delicate, almost too fine for such a rough canvas. Eros stared. Anya grinned, waiting. "Mrs. Halverson said it looks like something from a storybook. I'm going to enter it in the contest. Do you think it stands a chance, Uncle?" The room seemed to narrow. The lights hummed. Eros' throat tightened, words caught like burst. He forced a nod. "It's beautiful." Her smile widened and she touched the pumpkin's rim, proud. "I thought it might be too much, but it came out just right, like it wanted to be this." He looked at her then, the curve of her face, the easy joy she carried, and a chill pressed through him. He wanted to take the pumpkin, smash it to pieces, scatter it until nothing remained, but his hands stayed at his sides, heavy, trembling. Around them the social carried on, voices warm, folks scraping plates, children laughing. No one saw Eros' jaw set. No one heard the prayer breaking in his chest. The day after the social, Eero rose before dawn and worked the chores harder than they needed. He pitched hay twice over, shoveled stalls already cleaned, stacked wood that was already stacked. Anything to keep from looking at the table where Anya's pumpkin sat wrapped again in its towel, waiting. When Anya came into the kitchen, hair tied back, cheeks still pink from sleep, he barely glanced at her. "You should go into town today," he said, voice flat. She blinked. "It's only Thursday." "Go. Be with your friends. Don't stay here." She frowned but didn't argue. He was often gruff, and sometimes the farm wore him thin. She gathered her things and left, humming to herself as she went. The sound of her boots on the porch boards faded, leaving the house too quiet. Eero stood a long time staring at the closed door. Then he turned to the pumpkin. He pulled it from the towel, set it on the table. The wolf stared back at him, jaw open in a howl, moon carved in a perfect arc above it. In daylight, the lines looked even sharper, shadows caught in every cut. He lifted it with both hands and slammed it against the floor. The sound was dull, wrong. The gourd bounced, rolled to a stop, did not crack, did not dent. Eero swore under his breath, hauled it up again, and brought it down even harder. The floorboard shuddered, but the pumpkin only rocked, steadying itself upright as if mocking him. Eero's breath rasped. He fetched the wood axe from beside the door, raised it high, and brought the blade down. The steel bit into the rind with a jolt that rattled his arms, but when he lifted the axe free, the cut was shallow, already closing, the flesh knitting like skin. He staggered back, chest heaving. The wolf grinned up at him, unchanged. The moon hung, unbroken. The axe clattered to the floor, and Eero pressed a hand to his face and felt the heat on his skin, the sting of tears he hadn't even known he was shedding. He had known it was hopeless, but he still had to try. Outside, the day carried on, the sound of children running past the house, a dog barking. Life moved simple and unknowing. Inside, the pumpkin sat where it had always sat, waiting for the contest, waiting for the 31st. Halloween came sharp with the wind, the kind that chased leaves down the alleys and rattled shutters loose. By dusk, Iron Bay streets swarmed with children in masks and ragged costumes. Bedsheet ghosts, cardboard knights, painted witches with hats that flopped in the breeze. They shrieked and laughed, buckets clattering as they raced from house to house. Eero watched none of it. He sat on the porch in the dark, hat brim low, the boards cold beneath his boots. He had done the chores slow, stretching them past sunset, and when the lanterns lit in town, he didn't follow. His truck stayed in the yard. He was trying to let the night pass him by. Anya went with her friends, her cheeks flushed, scarf tight around her neck. She carried her pumpkin carefully, swaddled in the same towel as if she held a child. She called a quick goodbye over her shoulder, and he raised a hand without turning, afraid his voice would crack if he tried to answer her. In town, the square was strung with lights. Paper lanterns bobbed above the crowd, each painted with a face, smiling, scowling, grinning too wide. Long tables sagged under platters of food, pies, roasted corn, sugared nuts. The air was warm with cider steam and wood smoke. The contest drew the biggest crowd. A long row of pumpkins lined the platform, each one carved, some crude, some clever. Children dragged their parents over and pointing at bats, at faces with too many teeth, at clumsy cats that looked more like dogs. And then Anya set hers down. The wolf tilted its head back in a silent howl, the crescent moon above it catching the lamplight. Cornstalks bristling behind, each line etched as fine as a pen stroke, and people leaned in close, murmured admiration. Mrs. Halverson clapped her hands, declaring, "It's the most handsome piece I've ever seen." The judges walked slow along the row, nodding here, pausing there. When they reached Anya's, they lingered the longest. One bent down, tracing a finger near the carved stalks without touching. Another shook his head, smiling, already convinced. When they announced the winner, the cheer rolled through the square like thunder. Anya blinked, stunned, then laughed, her breath white in the air. A ribbon was pressed into her hand, her friends clapping her back. She lifted the pumpkin high so all could see, and the crowd roared again at the sight of the wolf and the moon and the stalks cut against the night. It was the first time anyone could remember a Callio winning the contest. Folks said it with surprise, but also with warmth. About time, they laughed. About time that farm took home the prize. They put the pumpkins out, after all. Anya's eyes shone, her cheeks flushed, her smile wide as the wolf's howl. She looked into the crowd for her uncle, eager to share it with him, but Eero was not there. He was still on his porch at the edge of town, house dark, listening to the cheer. His hands gripped his knees, knuckles white, his head bowed as if in prayer, but he did not move, not even when the sound of the crowd rose again, then faded into the night. The house was dark when Anya came home, the prize ribbon tucked in her pocket, her arms full of the pumpkin. Her laughter lingered in her chest, the warmth of the crowd still on her skin. She came in the back door and set the pumpkin down, then went out to the porch to tell her uncle the news. He didn't look up when she stepped onto the boards, only shifted as if the weight of the footsteps pressed on him. In the faint glow of the light through the window, his eyes shone wet. "Uncle, are you all right?" He swallowed, throat working. His voice came rough, cracked. "You shouldn't have carved it." She blinked. "The pumpkin? But it won. They loved it. You shouldn't have carved it," he said again, as if saying it might change what had already been done. His hands twisted the hat brim until the straw snapped under his grip. Anya sat down in the chair next to him. "Uncle, you're frightening me." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw it. Fear carved deep into his face, shame heavier than any scolding, tear tracks down his cheeks, shining in the dark. "It's the cycle, Anya. This year it's us. This year it's you." Before she could speak, before she could laugh it off as some grim jest or ask any questions, the vines stirred. They crept up the steps, green ropes sliding silent from the yard, curling over the boards. The pumpkin on the porch trembled, its carved wool flickering with shadows, the crescent moon cut above it faint with the inner light. Anya stood and gasped, stumbling backwards, but the vines coiled fast around her ankles, her calves, her waist. She clawed at them, their bristled skin cutting her palms. "Uncle!" she cried. Eero started to lunge forward, trying to grasp her arm, trying to pull her hard, but the vines pulled harder. His boots skidded on the boards. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The shadow rose from the yard, tall, grinning wide, its hollow eyes fixed on her. It loomed until the porch itself seemed to sag beneath its weight. Anya screamed, the sound ripping through the night. Birds started from the trees, wings thrashing in the dark. The vines dragged her from the porch, her nails raking down the boards. She was pulled into the yard, into the tangle of vines, into the waiting dark. Her cry carried once more, sharp and terrible, before it cut off. The shadow bowed, mocking, its grin wide enough to split the sky. Then it too folded into the rows, into the pumpkins, into the soil itself. Silence fell as if nothing had ever stirred. Eero stood on the porch, breath ragged, face wet, staring at the empty boards where she had stood. The pumpkin remained, its wolf howling up at the night, unbroken, unburned. He sank to his knees, hat falling from his hands, shoulders shaking. The night pressed close, and the only sound left was the wind moving through the dry stalks of the fields like whispers, like laughter, like grief. Morning came pale, the frost thick on the fields. The farm was quiet, too quiet. The chores still needed doing, and Eero did them with hands that shook, each movement stiff as if his joints had rusted overnight. He fed the chickens, forked hay into stalls, split a little wood. It all looked the same as it always had. Only the silence was different. When neighbors asked after Anya, he said she had gone to Marquette to be with her parents for the winter. He said it simply, without embellishment, the kind of thing that didn't invite questions. And why would anyone doubt him? Families came and went all the time, and a girl her age might want a change, more company, more bustle. People nodded, some smiled, some clucked their tongues as if to say, "Poor Eero, back to being all alone again." The lie sat heavy on his tongue, but lighter each time he told it. With each telling it sounded more like truth, but when he called his sister, the weight came back tenfold. He sat at the kitchen table, the phone cord taut between his hand and the wall. His voice broke as he said the words, "The debt was paid." On the other end came silence at first, then a sound that split him open, his sister's wail, raw and keening, spilling into his ear. She screamed his name, cursed the bargain, cursed the farm, cursed him for keeping her daughter close at all. The words tangled, broke apart, rose again in sobs. He held the receiver to his ear until his hand ached, but he had nothing more to say. The truth had already been spoken. At last he set the phone down, the line still alive with her grief. He sat staring at the wall until the dial tone replaced her cries. Days passed, the fields thinned, the vines blackened in the frost. Pumpkins shriveled or rotted where they lay, their bright skins dulled, their carved faces sagging in collapse. Eero did not harvest them. He let them melt back into the soil as if burying the evidence. At night he sat with the album on his lap. The clippings inside had yellowed, their edges curled, but each one carried its record. The pattern stretched like rings in a tree, circling back always to the Callio name. The shadow's promise rang in his ears every 7 years. A letter from Wisconsin came folded, neat, his cousin's handwriting careful and proud. "Our boy is married, and it's a good match. They have a baby now, a girl, strong lungs, full of life. He wants to come to Iron Bay in the spring and bring her and his wife. That way the farm maybe will stay in Callio hands once more." Eero read it twice, then a third time as if the words might change. They did not. The line would continue, the bargain would hold, and he sat the letter down on the table. Tears blurred the ink, spread the careful words into stains. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, but the wet came through all the same. Outside, the wind rattled the bare branches, carrying the smell of earth and rot. Somewhere in the field, a pumpkin collapsed under its own weight, the sound soft, almost like a sigh. Eero sat alone in his kitchen, the letter damp with tears, the album waiting to be put back under the bed. The accord had been sealed long before him, and long after him it would remain. Hello again. This concludes Rust Belt Studios' Into the Dark of the Woods introductory story, The Bargain of the Field. This episode was written and performed by Brian Foster. I want to take a minute and talk about, well, everything. First and foremost, thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for supporting this little corner of the world we're building together. When I say my favorite listener, I mean it. Anyone who listens to this is my favorite. Into the Dark of the Woods now moves to its regular schedule, Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Each story arc will be told in 5 parts like this one, and we'll release 8 arcs a year. For you math wizards, that's 40 weeks of new stories with short breaks in between. But don't worry, you'll always hear about what's next right here in these outros. Now about Rust Belt Studios itself. When you hear that name, that's the dream. The full creative engine behind all of our shows. And right now, you're hearing the full creative engine behind all of our shows because it's me. One person, one mic, one vision. Growth comes with costs, and to help offset them, we'll soon begin adding short ads to public episodes. Your listens alone will help support us even if you skip the ads. But if you'd rather go ad-free or just want to help the studio grow faster, you can visit our Patreon, and the link is in the show notes below. For $2 a month, you'll get all public episodes ad-free and a day early, as well as access to our private Discord community. At $5 a month, you'll get that plus extra content, exclusive one-shot dark stories, lore drops for our other shows, and behind the mic or making of featurettes. At least one a month, it'll probably be more. And if you're feeling generous, the $9 tier gives you everything plus a voice with the studio. You now work with me. Early access to new projects, voting on character names, name a character, choosing show orders, State of the Union updates. If you like, your name or your handle will be read in one of the outro credits as a supporting executive producer. Every subscription, every listen helps us make more stories for you, and I thank you again, my favorite listener. I'll see you next Friday.